Things to check on your camera before recording. Now, one would think that shooting a video would be fairly straightforward these days, but with all the advances made in video-capable cameras in the last few years, a newcomer might assume it's simply point and hit record. But if you want to make the most of your equipment and get the best shots, you can follow this simple checklist. I'll be talking about the important things you need to check before hitting the record button on your camera. If you're looking to produce a full HD project, then 1920 by 1080 and 24 frames per second is typically what you would want to use. However, there are other resolutions and frame rates, but this usually would be according to a region of your choice. My projects are always full HD, but oftentimes I do shoot 4K. This just gives me more wiggle room in post to scale, rotate, stabilize the footage if needed. Shutter speed. Your shutter speed will typically be 1 over double your frame rate. After 24 frames per second, that means 1/48 of a second. As most cameras don't shoot 1/48 of a second, 1/58 is your best choice. This will give you a good natural level of motion in your shots. If you are shooting 60 frames per second, then you would want to be at 1/125th of a second. At 125 frames per second, 1/250th of a second. The ISO. With still photography, the shutter speed usually defines the exposure. But with video, your shutter speed is fixed, so the ISO becomes your primary exposure setting. I shoot ISO 100 to 200 during bright outdoor conditions, and indoors, about ISO 800 gets the work done with a fair amount of grain, if any. However, with more recent cameras, you can go much higher without having to worry about this. Focus. Focus can be a pain, especially outdoors in bright conditions. Most DSLRs and mirrorless cameras used for video have a feature which lets you zoom into a scene. Use this to your advantage. Magnify into that fine detail, adjust your focus manually, and then magnify back out to view the whole scene. Picture style. I typically set the camera's picture style to neutral. It tends to give me enough information for my needs without having to mess around with things like Cine-like style or S-Log, or in some cases, V-Log. But depending on what you're shooting, log might just be a better way to go. White balance. I use the camera's inbuilt white balance presets, but occasionally I need to shoot a custom white balance in certain environments. When I start recording a particular lighting or color tricky situation, I often grab extra footage, especially of a color checker, just to make sure everything is right in post. Check your memory card. I check my memory card at the beginning of a shoot to see what's on it. If there's something on it, scan through to see if you need to keep it or delete it. This is something I prepare way in advance of an actual shoot. At the end of the shoot, the first thing I do is to transfer cards to at least 2 locations. Then the cards are wiped in the camera and go back into my case. If a card is in my case, then that means it's safe to use, and anything that might be on it is also safe to delete. Once you've checked all these settings, it is finally okay to hit the record button. Fortunately, for many of these things, you only need to check them at the start of a shoot. Checking your memory cards, frame rate, resolution settings, picture style, and shutter speed, you don't really need to worry about them again. Hope you find this video useful. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Till next time, thanks for listening to me and have a lovely day.